but you can't erase history. We're not going to be erased. My mother died in 2017. I am so glad that she's not around to see this. Where's the pride in being a U.S. citizen anymore?
I'm here to mourn the destruction of one of our brightest symbols of the black resistance. Trump 1.0 was the resistance. Trump 2.0 is the acquiescence. And to see it destroyed because of capitulating to Donald Trump is beyond insulting.
It was one way of letting us know that our contributions matter, that our black lives will always matter. We just happen to be at a point where there's been a setback. This setback is definitely setting the stage for a remarkable comeback.
Charles, that was a video and a news story about a number of brothers and sisters in D.C. who are angry that the Trump administration, through Republicans in Congress, kept applying pressure to the city of D.C. to remove the mural of Black Lives Matter that had been installed and built into the concrete of a street of a boulevard. And this was not the first time they had come after them. They came out back in 2020 asking for the same thing, to have it removed. Well, now the Trump administration supported that move and allowed them to make and leverage threats of cutting funds to the city if they did not remove it. So a number of black people in the city were kind of voicing their displeasure and upsetness with it. And I just want to say to my brothers and sisters, painting Black Lives Matter on a boulevard doesn't prove anything to black people. We have the power and the authority to, if we want to put Black Lives Matter signs in every black household's yard, you can do that. If you want to put a Black Lives sign in front of every business, every place that we frequent and patronize, we have the power to do that. But you must remember that though D.C. is predominantly black, black folk don't own D.C. So if the white man wants his concrete back, let him have his concrete back. I'm more concerned that we as black people got to show that black life matters the most to us. We have to prove to the world that black lives are sacred to black people first. And by the way we're destroying each other in the streets of D.C., in the streets of America, by the way we're on social media castrating each other's character, demonizing each other, the way our rappers are promoting self-destructive lifestyles and behavior. We don't need Black Lives Matter on the street. We need Black Lives Matter riveting and vibrating through the hearts and minds of black people. So let them have their street. The hell with their street. Let us show them by coming together in the name of black love and consciousness, black people. The power of us if we do that. Because Trump, I keep saying this, is a businessman. Why don't we show how much Black Lives matter by withholding black dollars? And then we determine where those dollars go. I guarantee you, they'll come out there and give us anything that we want. They won't be begging for a street then. They'll be begging for us to put our money back into the economy, because without us, it won't work.
Well, I think, again, it seems like you're talking about things that aren't at all on topic.
Because you're not a black man.
I guess, Whitey can't
It's
understand
a black thing, you won't
anything.
get it.
Well, fortunately, I get one chair on this show. So the Black Lives Matter Plaza there in D.C., over $7 million was spent to paint a road and put a little concrete abutment there in the middle of the road. Money that could have spent on a daycare for children, on housing in an incredibly impoverished city, Washington, D.C. You have so many African Americans that aren't employed by the government, living far below the poverty line, right? But of course, let's look at the Black Lives Matter movement generally, right? The founders of that organization got hundreds of millions of dollars and bought a bunch of mansions that they called affinity centers.
Actually, they got up to $1 billion.
Okay, yeah, tons of money. And then when you talk to the family members of the people whose names that they paraded all over America, and let's exclude George Floyd's family. They had a huge settlement with the state of Minnesota, and they had very effective lawyers, and they got a lot of help from a bunch of different channels too. But we're talking tens of millions of dollars, right? But almost everyone else right? You talk to the family members of Ahmaud Arbery. You can go just pick a list, right? And they'll say, well, they were using my loved one's name to raise money, but when I called them for help, I didn't hear a word. Okay, we saw an incredible amount. We saw different BLM organizations feuding with each other over donor dollars, over government dollars, right? And what we've seen is no one's having an honest conversation about how the people that led that movement co-opted that movement to make themselves very, very wealthy. We've seen some sporadic indictments, but not much, for the misuse of these funds, right? So while I do think, especially in DC, we need to have a very, very clear commemorative of the protests and the marches, not just
but Black Lives Matter is bigger than a few misunderstood, misled, corrupt.
No, I'm talking about the leaders.
Hold on,
leaders.
Corrupt individual leaders.
Okay,
you with
right.
me?
Right.
Black Lives Matter is a mindset.
Okay.
That's bigger than any organization or any quote unquote leader, male or female. It's a mindset of consciousness.
Okay.
So now we cannot point out some corruption that may exist in the Black Lives Matter organizational structure.
That may exist.
1 second. Without pointing out the corruption that exists in the United States government. Look at the billions of dollars we give them, and that corruption is there. But what about the Red Cross? The Red Cross had financial mismanagement and corruption within it. The United Way had CEOs in Vegas buying prostitutes with the money. Charles, the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts had financial mismanagement in their organization. The Catholic Church was pimping young children and secretly using the money to keep it silent. So how in the hell you gonna make it look like Black Lives Matter is some existential, separate, unique institution when that corruption exists all throughout America's institutions?
Okay, so I guess you're arguing that corruption doesn't matter because other people are corrupt.
Of course it matters.
I don't
but
disagree.
you want to make it like black folks are the only corrupt people in America.
No, I wasn't talking generally about black folks. I was talking about the
You want to
leadership.
highlight them and then talk about how black people suffer.
I highlighted the leadership of Black Lives Matter because we're literally sitting here talking about that movement getting streets painted in New York for $7 million that just disappeared.
And they pimp black people, you said, to get that money. The Red Cross did the same thing.
Okay, I don't disagree.
The United Way did the same thing.
But
when the people in New Orleans through Hurricane Katrina, they went through all that suffering, and billions came in from all over the world, and the United Way and the Red Cross were all accused of taking that money, paying high administrative fees to those in the front offices, but not helping the people of Katrina.
Well, one, I don't think the United Way's administrative fees are very high, but when they start painting roads for these corrupt organizations, and they want them to take it down, I'm not going to be crying about it.
But they were not painting the road for an organization. They put that in the road for a level of black male, female, and child consciousness.
No, they were literally
to say to the world that Black Lives Matter, because in this country, for hundreds of years, our lives did not matter.
That took that money and bought a bunch of mansions all over the country, right? And said these are like think spaces or some sort of nonsense, right? And they used other people's deaths, violent, brutal deaths at the hands of the police to raise, well, you said, I thought it was hundreds of millions. You said billions of dollars.
It was up to $1 billion allegedly.
Right? And it just went everywhere other than helping black people. It went everywhere.
But that's the American way, unfortunately.
Well, okay, but we should be pissed off. Black people should be mad at Black Lives Matter.
Remember when all these white...
Because they got ripped off.
But wait a minute. Remember when all these white Christian pastors, when these white Christian organizations went to Africa and was claiming to feed all these starving African children, donate money to us for the starving kids of Africa, and come to find out that damn kids didn't even get 10% of the donations.
Well, look at the Clintons. Look at Haiti.
Yeah, so we got to talk now, man.
But I'm all for it, for accountability and where that money goes. In fact, that's what I think Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing with the Doge effort. But right now we're talking about
I don't disagree with everything Elon is doing.
Would you?
Some of what Elon is doing is on point.
Oh, I don't
and
even
it
like
needs
either
to
of
be
them,
done.
But they're doing something important where the government needs to stop wasting money. But I think it was $7.2 million spent to paint a damn road, Quanell?
Now, you and I both know.
Come on.
But I said it. We don't need a road. I said that. We don't need that road.
Okay.
We need the level of consciousness and black love in the black
Do you know
community
what the
that
public
values
schools-
black life.
Do you know what the public schools are like in Washington, D.C.?
All over America.
But let's talk.
They
about,
like that all over
but
America.
Let's talk about D.C. because D.C. spent the $7.2 million instead of spending it on kids that go to hellholes, falling apart schools that aren't safe. Right? Everybody that's got any money lives out in the suburbs or puts their kids in private school, right? And it's a poor black child. And let me make no mistake, the Republican Party as a whole doesn't care much for the suffering of big city African and people of
Does
color.
the Department of Education care?
No, absolutely not.
They doing the same thing.
Right, but here's the thing. Okay, so now you're flipping back
No,
to
you
a
want to
Trumper.
point out the black leadership of D.C. not spending that money on black students who can use it. Well, guess what? The Department of Education
Top
is
shelf.
just as guilty
Hey, look, you're
with
right.
all these failing public schools in America and the most underserved have been black children.
Top shelf whataboutism, but hey, we're talking about this road painting, right? And yes, there are other parts of our government, all typically led by Democrats, that squander money. But of course, when the Republicans get involved and they just find a way to send all the money to their crony capitalists, right? It's all corrupt, it's all crap. Right, but as Americans, as people on TV, when we're talking about a subject, I know you want to point the finger everywhere else, right?
No, I'm pointing out facts.
No, I'm pointing out facts. And the fact is, we need to stop this performative politics nonsense. We need to stop squandering millions of dollars on painting roads. And we need to start spending money on actually helping those that are struggling.
I disagree with that. I believe that we should continue using Americans' tax dollars to fix some of these raggedy-ass roads in America.
That's not what they
Some
did.
of these roads are so
They
raggedy,
painted
it's
a road.
pathetic. And some of these bridges that are collapsing
I
and
don't
falling in on
disagree.
itself, take some of that money from Ukraine that you've been spending and rebuild America's infrastructure.
Well, again, I don't
I'm
disagree.
cool with that.
Okay, so you'll agree with me now. It took a long time to get here. That $7.2 million should have been spent on making roads better or making schools better,
I
and
would
not
say
on
this.
a stupid
That
performative nonsense.
That $7.2 million should have been put to the voters. Do you mind if we do this in your name with your money, or would you like us to allocate that $7.2 million somewhere else?